to the second Art Discovery Series of the 2025 season. Today's topic is faces and figures. So we have gathered up some of our very best portrait and figurative artists, and we are looking forward to a very lively conversation today. So thank you for being here, and thank you for those who have joined us online. It's a beautiful day here in Scottsdale. This is the best place to be celebrating art right here. So I'm excited to introduce our panelists. On your left, brand new to the celebration of fine art this year, the fabulous Tina Garrett from Kansas City. And right next to her is Robin D'Amore, who actually recommended Tina to come and talk to us last year and apply. So thank you, Robin. And right next to me, the beautiful Judith Dixonson. Judith Dixonson. So, how many of you have ever had a portrait done of you or a loved one? Anyone? Yes, good, excellent. Well, it's very exciting to have it done, and also, you don't necessarily have to do portraits of individual people. We have beautiful paintings ready to go off the wall, but I like to always start with having each of the artists tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how long you've been creating art, and we're going to start with Tina.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Tina Garrett. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. And I've been coming out to Scottsdale to teach at the Scottsdale Artist School for several years, but this is my first time at this show, and it's such an honor to be accepted and already making a tremendous amount of friends. I've been an artist my whole life, but I didn't start oil painting until 2012. And so, in a way, I'm new to it, but I feel like I've been doing what I've been meant to do. So, it's been very fun.
Wonderful. And we're going to hear a little bit more about your journey in the next round, I think. But Robin?
Hello. My name is Robin D'Amore, and I'm from Vancouver, Washington. And I started painting when I was 45 and have been painting about 25 years. And Tina was a mentor for me when I was learning to paint, and for that I'm very grateful. And I've been at the show. This is my 6th year at the show.
Awesome. Great. And how about you, Judy?
I was raised in New Jersey, and my dad was, I blame it on my dad. He was the pastor of the church, and he was boring. And the only thing we could do during church is draw. So I started drawing when I was tiny. And when I was 8, a man asked if he could show me how to oil paint out by the lake in New Jersey. The story was that my great-grandfather was actually a pretty famous painter in England, but he started to drink, and he became this horrible alcoholic. So they sent him to America to see if that would straighten him out. And he almost died, but he started the oldest residential Christian alcohol place, and so a rehabilitation center. So I grew up with 60 men, and so one of those men was the one that taught me how to oil paint out by the lake. And it was a wonderful experience, and I never wanted to stop.
Well, that's a great story. Did your dad know that you were bored?
Yes, he did.
But he's happy for you. He grew to be happy as you expanded in your career. That's great. That's wonderful. So, as an artist, you have lots of choices of subject matter and medium of what you want to paint. So what is it that each of you felt so drawn to the human figure and faces and creating lasting memories on campus for people? So, Tina, we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, I really love oil paintings because they're so much more forgiving than other mediums. I don't know if any of you are artists, but I first started making work for myself after decades as an illustrator. I started to make pastel paintings. And the mayor in my town hired me to paint his wife in pastel. And when I took that very large pastel painting to the framer, the framer was excited and visiting with me, and he spit on the painting, which left a mark. And I had to recrop the whole piece, and it was devastating. And that's the last pastel I ever painted. After that, I said, I'm going to paint oil, because no matter what happens, I've actually had a forklift go through the forehead of one of my lovely pieces, but it took 4 months, but I was able to repair it. And that's the miracle of working in oil. And in terms of subject matter, I really just paint what I feel called to paint. And sometimes it's the sky, and sometimes it's a child, and sometimes it's a dancer. And the thread that connects all of those things together is me and what it is I need from the artwork that I do.
Well, I have only ever been interested in doing portraiture. Because I started painting so late, when I took my first painting class, I've been drawing for a couple of years and drawing heads, and I was like, I do not want to go in to a painting class and paint, cubes and spheres. I only wanted to do heads, and I think it's because I really like people, and I like working to channel their energy into a painting, and I am a very bad landscape painter. Like if you saw my landscapes, you'd go, oh, that's nice, Robin. But I wish I could do landscapes, but really it's only people that I am good at, and that I really like to do it. I don't get bored working on a face until it really has the likeness of the subject.
Yeah, I've always been attracted to faces, so I've painted about 100 years now. And face, I like to do still lifes, I like to do anything, but I really love to do faces, and especially commissioned portraiture where you've got to be right on, and very challenging. In my booth right now, I just was working on 2 little girls that just passed away at 10 and 12. So sad, but to be able to give the grandparents and the mom something to treasure was, and I prayed through the whole thing that I would get it well, but they finally approved of it. And so that just brings so much pleasure to us to be able to capture that likeness, and so I've always loved to do that.
Yeah. It really is a treasure. Several years ago, I don't know what happened or why, but the artist decided to have Judy do a portrait of my husband, Jake, and I. And Jake said,
No, I just decided.
okay, and we were stunned. And Jake said, well, now if anything happens to us, people will have something to remember us by. And I thought, well,
Yeah, maybe.
There's a living painting that will always capture that moment. So, and I wanted to bring this. This is another one of Judy's. I'm going to pass this around because a portrait doesn't always have to be somebody's face. This is another. A gift from Judy for Jake. If you don't know who Jake is, he's the one. He's back there. Hi, honey. He's standing by the cafe. He's the one that does all the heavy lifting, setting up the tent and stuff. And Judy gave this to him one year, and I'm just going to pass it around. Just a representation of the hard work. Although his fingernails wouldn't really be this clean, but. It was so cool, and I love how each of you capture emotion, and you capture, your pieces behind you, Tina, are amazing. The emotion, by the way, Zephyr is on the Fine Art Connoisseur Virtual Art Gallery today. I don't know if you got my email. And then Robin, I would love to hear what made you tackle this crazy thing. Can you imagine doing a puzzle for this? And then Judy, we can talk a little bit more about your works and some of the compelling stories you have again of what. But Tina, your work has such a graceful, ethereal beauty to it, and I would love to hear a little bit about why you chose these pieces, and if you would share a little bit of your story of going from graphic artist to fine art artist, and the commitment and the courage you took to do that.
Okay. Yeah. So, as Susan says, my original career, I had to go to a graphic design school. I wanted to be an artist, but my parents said, you have to go to this school in Colorado because you have a cousin that lives here. So I got to that school after going through student loans and moving from Kansas City to Denver, only to find out that I was going to learn Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator and all these other graphic design tools, and I was heartbroken that I wasn't going to learn how to paint, but I just had to do what I had to do. So after almost a decade as a freelancer, I had the opportunity to work for Church of the Nazarene publishing house, and I did all of their preschool through 12th grade curriculum. Little tiny cute pictures, hidden pictures inside of things, or cut out paper dolls. It was darling work. I drew baby Jesus more times than any person should ever draw baby Jesus. But around 2010, even though I had been the breadwinner for more than a decade, my husband is a firefighter, I saw about an 80% drop in what I had been making as an illustrator, and by 2011, the Nazarene Publishing House went bankrupt. And what happened was that kids stopped using crayons and glitter and glue and started using iPods and interactive DVDs and other digitally rendered things. And I found myself with a portfolio that no one needed. And my husband and I sort of struggled for a bit. Luckily, he already had his RN, so he would go and work an extra day at the ER after the fire department. And this went on for about a year before he said, why don't you try to go to school, become a dental hygienist or something? And when we retire, he'll do travel nursing and I'll do travel dentistry, right? Sounded like a logical choice. Until I get to the dental school and nearly pass out when they show me the area where all the students are cleaning other people's teeth. I realized that if I took one more step in that direction, I wasn't going to be any kind of an artist. And that was really devastating to me. So I talked to a super close friend, and I had already done a handful of those pastels, but hadn't really made any money. And she drew this picture for me. It was a scribble. She used a whole piece of paper and made this tangle of knots and blackness on this page. And she put a little tiny dot on one side and a little tiny dot on the other. And she said, this dot is you today. You don't know anything about art. You're not going to make any money with the art that you're making. And this dot on the other side of this mass of chaos is you as a master painter. But in order to become this other dot, you have to go through all of this stuff, which is fear and loss, and everyone in your family telling you you're being selfish, and your kids going hungry, and your friends telling you that you're, self-involved, all this terrible stuff. And she said, do you still want it? And I just started to bawl. I said, yeah, I really, really do want it. And she said, then I don't want to hear you talk about being anything else ever again. And these are her words, not mine. She said, you are the Rembrandt of the 21st century. And I thought, this is my moment. If the universe set it up so that I don't have any other way to make a living. I could go sack groceries, or I could go learn to be a dental hygienist. But if I really wanted to finally become the painter I wanted to be, this was the moment to try. So I spent all the energy and time that I had to try to find a place where I could get a short-term, master-level quality training, and I did that at the Scottsdale Artist School, which is, oddly enough, an organization here in town that Susan's mother, Anne, was part of. Thank you, Anne, for everything you guys have done, because the Scottsdale Artist School gave me my first scholarship and my second scholarship. And I was able to take master level training from an artist named Romel de la Torre, who was a student of Richard Schmid. And I got on the right track on learning how to oil paint from the very best there was alive on the planet from the very first day. And so everything I know about oil painting I attribute to the school and how they set me up in the right place. I didn't choose the teacher or anything. I just showed up with paints I had never used before and made an absolute nightmare. But it turned into really the most beautiful life I could imagine. And now I teach all around the world. I mentor students, just as Robin was saying, through the Portrait Society and on my own. And I get to be here when it's 5 degrees in Kansas City, which is worth all the money in the world. Did you want me to speak on these
create
two?
fabulous paintings?
So I'm always making the work that I want to go into. I want to be inside these pieces. I want to experience the level of peace and courage or self, the introspection or wonder that I'm painting. I want that for myself. So I'm very self-centered. All the pieces that I make revolve around myself and what I want to see come alive on the canvas. So there's really no mystery to that, is that I make them the way I want them to be so I could go there in the process of creating.
Beautiful. Yes. Robin, yeah, talk about anything you want, but you're working on a very complex piece here.
So, this is the largest painting that I've ever done with the most people that I have ever done in a single painting.
So both the largest and the most.
Yes.
Yay.
Yes.
Woohoo!
This is a set of grandparents and their 14 grandchildren, and they are from Pendleton, Oregon, and he was the president of the Pendleton Roundup, which is a rodeo that's been going on for 125 years, and they were able to herd the cats of getting all these 14 into one place at their ranch, which has been in their family for over 100 years. And I was a photographer before I started painting, so it took about 8 hours to light this for the photograph. And then to shoot it was only about a half an hour with the entire group. And then I shot them each individually in their place and then photoshopped them together to create the composite. So, so this is the photograph that I created here. And it was, we can pass this around if you want to see it. And you know, it's very difficult if you're doing a multi-subject painting. You have to, the rule is that everyone has to be represented equally. At least they have to be they have to be painted as well as one another, and they all have to look like themselves. And so, for me, the key is to have a really good resource for each of the subjects before I start painting. And in this case, I used Annie Leibowitz, who is a photographer for Vanity Fair. I used her process where if she is responsible for a photograph for a dozen celebrities, she will shoot the background without anyone in it, and then she will put them all in place. She'll shoot that composite, and then she shoots them each individually, and they get photoshopped into place, which is, as I said, exactly what I did with this one. I also used what's called the Fibonacci sequence, which is a naturally occurring pattern in nature that you see in the nautilus shell. So it has that kind of a spiral feel to it. And I used that to do the layout of where the heads were being. Lots of times you'll see a family photograph and everybody is in two lines. And it's a very monotone rhythm. And I was looking for an organic rhythm to the layout of the heads and the figures. And so I actually laid the Fibonacci sequence over the top of the composition to make sure that I had that kind of a rhythm going on. Also, we use color here, and again, this is in progress, so I would say I'm maybe about 70% done with this. I used color, those red shirts of the boys, to lead us through the figures. They also had this incredible amount of artifacts because this ranch house has been in their family for such a long time. So they had these gauntlets, is what they're called, they're rodeo gloves. They had probably 20 of them framed, as well as these moccasins. So I took all of that off the wall, shot them without anything on the wall, and then I put them back up on the wall in the photograph, again, to follow the Fibonacci sequence. There's a lot of symbolism for them in this painting. So this saddle was his, the grandfather's, when he was a baby or a boy. And these two saddles are also part of the family history. I also put the dog in here, which is kind of hard to see. He's kind of an Easter egg, something that you discover as you look at the painting a little bit longer. And the Pendleton Roundup, this is a wool blanket that was made by Pendleton Woolen Mills that I added to this. And that howdy is really part of how they welcome the world. They're a very welcoming, lovely family, and I wanted to reflect that in this painting. So, again, it's very challenging. This is a very challenging piece for me, but I really am loving every minute of working on it because they are kind of starting to come to life. I really can see each of them. I feel like I have a likeness even if I don't have a finish on each subject that's in the painting.
Wow, that's amazing.
One more thing, so because we went to all the work to do the photography, I designed their Christmas card for them. So this is the cover of the Christmas card, and inside is all the children and their spouses. So it goes from 16 to 24 on the inside, and then on the back is an outtake from the photographer. So whenever I shoot, the subjects always get all the photographs, and usually they are the best photographs that they have had taken of them. I'm a very, very good photographer, and I was a photographer about 10 years before I started painting. So I've been a photographer for 35 years and know how to take a really good resource photograph before I ever start painting.
Wow, that's amazing. I want to go see their place, actually.
They would love to have you.
Yes. Will you bring that painting completed next year?
No, they will have it next year.
darn.
But I will have a copy of it. Most everything that's in my booth are copies of the originals, so I will make a smaller G-clay of this, and it'll hang in my booth.
Is that the
Plus, you should come back and see it because it'll get finished while I'm here.
Oh, it will?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, people have been coming back and seeing kind of the progress because it's all I've worked on since I've been at the show, since the 18th. And I had about 10 days into it before I started. I figure I will have about 500 hours into the painting by the time it's finished.
She doesn't even eat lunch.
I had a hot dog, I'm not sure what's
We had to go tear this away from her so we could bring it over here earlier. Like, Robin, we got to get set up. So, well, congratulations. And I know all of you just love what you do and you have so much fun, and the ability to capture emotion and likeness is uncanny. And people. So I want to have you talk a little bit about Shannon and your other piece, but tell them about your. Is this the 5th annual, or is it long? 10 years. Okay, so share a little bit about that.
And I was going to reiterate what she said. It's such a privilege that at my age, I get so excited about each new painting. And people that are my age and they're retired and they have nothing really to do. So I'm so thankful that I go to the studio every single day, and I love to do it. So each year, Bruce and I started deciding that we would paint a portrait of one of the artists. And I think we've been doing it like 10 years, but I don't know. And so in the last probably 3 or 4 years, about 10 other artists have decided to do the same person. So we all come up with it, and pretty soon they'll be here in the cafe where you can see the likenesses. So this year, at first I didn't want to because she's too pretty, but we picked Shannon, and so Shannon is over there. And so I just started that. That's 2 days of painting, so it will. So it'll get better.
It really looks like her. I mean, it's a really good likeness. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we should get the photo, but, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you, and you did your own photograph and all the other artists who are creating
Yes,
her.
so we all photographed her like 3 days ago.
So, do you start with the background, or do you draw in first?
So
Or do you,
I draw, and not every artist does. So I paint my canvas gray, so that way I can use black charcoal and white charcoal. And I love to draw, so I like to do a finished drawing. And so then I spray a workable fixative on it, and then paint on top. And I always go for the eyes first. There's just something about eyes that I love to paint. And so I started with Shannon's eyes, but
You're so great.
I went to a paint your pet thing one time, like last summer, and I did a pretty good job, but the instructors took everybody's piece and they did the eyes. So I don't get credit for it, but it's not bad. I mean, but the eyes are really good, but I didn't do them.
you need to bring it in.
It's kind of cute. But, and you go pretty much every year to the roundup where the...
Yeah, we did for a lot of years. We would go to a ranch in South Dakota. And so therefore, I would meet Native Americans, cowboys, children, all sorts of people. And they've just become great friends through the years. And they actually follow me on Facebook and write comments when so poor Gary Gwynn, I paint all his wrinkles, and he never complains. But so some of the natives have just become great friends too, and it's been a wonderful experience. And then sort of I paint my grandchildren too. I make them pose for me. I think of new ideas, and they'll say, "Okay, Grammy," and so they're so sick of modeling. But anyway, and then the third category that I'll do, my husband and I work in Africa, so I love to paint the Africans. And so when I go to Africa, I'll bring them a print of the painting, and sometimes they've never seen themselves in a mirror even. And so to have this print, they're like shocked. And so I love to paint them and their faces, especially the dark skin. It's got so many colors in it, and so that's a privilege to be able to do that.
That's wonderful. That is so great. When you're working with your palette, I mean, to me, skin tone is so rich and beautiful, and there's the range of colors. Is there any like secrets that you use to get luminosity or capture? All of you can answer this.
For me, it's basically having a really controlled value pattern. So when I'm mixing my palette, all of the colors that are in the shadows, there may be 15 or 25 colors within the shadow, but I'll take a black and white picture of that section of my palette, and in black and white, even though there are 15 or 20 colors, it's all the same level of gray. So you might find purple or mint or yellow or rose in the shadows, but once it's in black and white, it holds that sort of very simplified value pattern. And that's also true for the light. So wherever the light is hitting the face, there may be 20, 30 colors, but in black and white, they're all the same level of gray. And having that very simplified value pattern allows me to have the illusion of a glowing light. Good answer.
Beautifully explained, absolutely.
I like to have a clear light side and a shadow side when I am painting a subject, and so I will use a key light to create, and I will have it off to one side and usually high, so that I can get some very dramatic highlights and also shadows. And I would say that what I'm constantly looking for are what is warmer and what is cooler. And warmer being more yellow and cooler being more blue. So if you're looking at the light side of a head, how does it move around say a cheek? How does the light move around the cheek, and what is happening in terms of warmth and coolness as that movement happens? When someone told me that the first time, I was like, what? That made no sense to me. And it only is, I think, in looking for warms and cools that you start to see it. And that saying of the more you see, the more you see. So as you look and observe and go deeper into any subject, you see more, and it stands out more. That you've got, like if someone has a bright red shirt on, if you look at these bright red shirts, that color is reflected up onto their skin. You can take, in most cases here, I've used the color of that shirt on their chin, because it's got that light is reflected up there. So I'm always looking for what's happening with reflected color, given the light, and also the strength of the chroma that's in the resource.
Yeah, I agree with what they're saying, and I tend to like to have a big contrast between my darks and my lights. And then the way I paint is many layers. So I keep my paints pretty thin so that I can just put layer upon layer. So most faces will have about 8 layers on it by the end. And that way I can build up that luminosity by doing that.
That's so wonderful. Some of you might have heard the story before, but years ago we were at the Crystal Bridges Museum in Bentonville, Arkansas, which if you haven't been, it's fantastic. And we were looking at, whose painting was it? It might have been the John Singer Sargent or the Robert Honore, but the security guard came up to me and he said, "Do you know that phrase, it'll cost you an arm and a leg?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, if you look at portraits," he said, "back in the day, only the really wealthy people would have a full portrait with hands in them, because many artists weren't good at painting hands. So if you wanted the finer master artists, you were going to pay an arm and a leg to get your hands in the painting." And I think I don't know if that's true story or not. Is it true?
Yeah, well, the way I understood the arm and the leg, because people have been asking me about this painting, and how did I
You've got
price
feet
it?
even.
Yes, and I say, well, you know the saying, it'll cost you an arm and a leg. That comes from portraiture, and the more arms and the more legs that you put into a painting, then the more it would cost. So yes, along the
Instead of
same
just a bust, you'd
Yes.
have, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So always look at the hands.
Yeah. I think all three of us really like painting hands, and the hands are such an expressive part of any figure, and especially with little kids, their hands, I always like to include their hands because they look like that for such a short amount of time, and being able to capture a little chubby hand on a little boy, and then see him, at 15, and his hands are giant, and his feet maybe you don't even want to look at, but being able to.
And if we want to know what baby Jesus hands look like, I bet Tina could show us.
No, I really do encourage you guys to come and take a close look at this one's hands, because those are those exact little chubby pink things you were talking about, and
Those are just
that was all on
gorgeous.
her own, her little She was just doing that all on her own. So it brings out their character.
Yeah. Yeah, they are very expressive, and again, I think that's why I like that paint. It's unexpected that someone would paint just a hand with a glove and share the whole story through that. I thought it was fabulous. I know that you are a Richard Schmid fan, but who are some of the influences to each of you?
Well, you were talking about Crystal Bridges. I love Forrest DeBrush. Do you know his Native American painting of he's got his hand in the water and like a swan over his shoulder?
Okay, yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And of course, N.C. Wyeth. That's where I get a lot of the ideas that I have for the backlit figures that I do. I just love his sort of epic person on the cliff with the gun and the beautiful sky behind him. I love N.C. Wyeth's work. Really good choices.
I really love Richard Schmid's work too, and especially his landscapes, especially because they're really out of my reach when it comes to anything landscape. I really like Daniel Green's portraits and Jeremy Lipking, and I mean there are so many fantastic contemporary portrait painters that I just am not worthy, they're so fantastic.
I have a great Lipking story. I would tell you that I took Lipking's workshop. So across Facebook came this advertisement for one of Lipking's workshops, and 1,500 people had already liked it. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to get in, but I'm going to be in California. I'm going to see if I can get in. And it let me pay for it. So then I called, and his wife answered, and I said, I just want to make sure I'm actually in. She's like, yes, you are. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to take Lipking's workshop. So I get there in his beautiful Agora Hills studio, which is now gone. And he's got, I think, 20 students in there. We're crammed as tight as we can be. And he's painting the nude figure, and so I'm very intimidated. And he comes around as I'm starting to work on my piece and says to me, great job, nice start. And then, of course, I totally lost it because I didn't want him to see how bad I was. So the rest of the day went on, and he just kept getting closer to me as he went and checked everyone else's students, and he was about 2 students away. And I wiped my whole canvas off, and there was only an hour and a half left in the class. And the kid behind me, his name's Baron Mong, and we had been in Romel's class together at Scottsdale Art School. He says, why did you do that? And I said, I don't know. And then Jeremy came over and said, I can't help you now. I can't critique you. I don't know where you are. I don't know how to guide you any further. And I was mortified. And in that moment, I realized how much I had wasted the opportunity to learn because I was too scared to show like where I really was. So I tell that story to all my students that if you get so like starstruck and nervous that you can't, let yourself be seen, then you're going to miss an opportunity to grow. So. But I know what you mean. Every time I see him, I go, I'm sorry I did that, Jeremy.
That's a pretty powerful story, though, really. Embracing the challenge and having courage.
Accepting yourself where you are is how you learn to get better.
And I agree with the ones they mentioned. Growing up, I was not around artists, and so the only magazine I'd ever see was where Norman Rockwell lived, the Saturday Evening Post. So I would copy everything Norman Rockwell did. That was my art background, was copying him. So I even have some left hanging in our house.
You learned from the best.
Yeah. And we have a sandwich named after him, the Rockwell. And it's kind of the all-American sandwich because it's your choice of turkey, ham, or roast beef with lettuce and tomatoes. So when we were assigning those names, we tried to match them to the character of the food. So everybody loved Norman Rockwell is fabulous, yeah.
Yeah. And I was, actually I got commissioned to paint the governor of Colorado when I took my first workshop. I shouldn't tell you that. And I took it from Tony Ryder. And if you've ever heard of him, he's a fabulous artist, and I learned so much. But also I was reassured that through the years I had taught myself good things. So it was a wonderful experience.
And it's probably not even possible, but you know, because all of you, I'm not as familiar with everything you've painted, but I've seen so many commissions come through the show. Has there ever been like one that you're like, that was the most incredible experience that I mean, this has to be up there for you. Or ones that you were like, oh, this is the hardest thing I've ever done.
Well, I got to spend time with Nichelle Nichols, who was Lieutenant Uhura from Star Trek, and I was hired to photograph her when she was 72, and I went to her house down in California, and to do the photography, and just spending the day with her. And she ended up liking me, and for some reason, and we just had a gas together. It was really fun. And I did a painting. Even though it was just about the photography, I liked one of the photographs that I had taken of her so much that I decided to paint it, and I painted it, and I showed it to her sister, and her sister said, "Well, it's a nice painting, but she won't like it because of the way her neck looks in the painting." And I was like, okay, well then I'm not going to show it to her. And I didn't show it to her for 12 years. And then she was coming to town to Comic-Con, and I got in touch with her sister, and I said, hey, you probably won't remember me, but I did this painting of Nichelle. And she said, no, I remember you. And it won't matter to her now because she had a small stroke. She has no short-term memory, and she cares about things differently. So I thought, okay, well, I invited her to my studio, and I brought dinner into the studio, and I unveiled this painting to her, and she cried and had the best response, and just, you know, I mean, really as good a response as you could have to the painting. And we sat down to have dinner, and she said, oh, is there a painting? So she had no short-term memory. I unveiled it to her 6 times that night, and every time she was seeing it for the very first time. It was a very kind of bittersweet kind of thing, and I did some photographs of her while she was in the studio, and the paintings of her from that photo shoot are in my studio here, and. She was wearing a gold kind of caftan, and I shot the pictures of her, and I didn't like them at all. And I had this aqua pashmina that I had gotten in Prague like the week before, and so she wore this huge turquoise ring, and it matched the ring. And I thought, well, that's a nice tie-in. So I took it, and she goes, oh, give me that. And she kind of wrapped herself looking like a goddess. And I took these photographs of her, and she invited me to dinner the next night in her hotel. And she, when I got there, she wasn't feeling well. And so she invited me up. We were going to order room service, and she was cold. So we got under the covers of her bed and looked at the photographs, which she did not remember, that we had shot the day before. And she picked her favorite ones, and that was I mean, it just, you know, kind of a gift that just keeps on giving, just in terms of spending the time with her. And she introduced me to her business partner and said, hey, you got to meet this girl. And at the time I was 50, and she's calling me a girl. I appreciate that. And she said, I really like her, and you know me, I don't like people. So anyway, that painting has been such a gift to my life. When I posted it on Facebook, I thought, well, I'll get, you know, the usual a few hundred likes or whatever. Well, I got 30,000 likes and 20,000 shares, and it was like amazing, the response that people had to the painting. And this woman from the Smithsonian saw the post and called me and asked me if I had the resource drawings that I had done for the painting, and could the Smithsonian acquire them. And I said, well, you know, I think you maybe could get the painting. And it's a longer story, but anyway, that painting of Michelle, that the resource I took of her that night, is in the Smithsonian in the National Portrait Gallery. They bought it from me after she passed in 23, and that is the biggest honor of my life, and certainly of my painting life, and way beyond what I could have imagined for myself when I started painting, and really just I don't know, it's kind of miraculous. You know, Tina talks about being, you know, destiny, and, you know, being where you should be and doing what you should do. And, you know, I feel, again, very fortunate to be doing what I'm doing, to be here at the celebration. The celebration is such an incredible venue for artists like us. I love working with people coming through. I get so much great energy from all of the people who come through constantly and talk to us and share and let us share, and it really is it's an amazing, wonderful opportunity for all of us here. And so thank you all for being here and for supporting this amazing this amazing place. It's because it makes a difference to all of us, really.
Into that. We talk about, like, this is the most wonderful form of human connection that can happen with creativity and art lovers, and connecting to the work that you all do. We are very blessed to be here, for sure. I'd like to leave time for anybody who might have a question. I mean, this has been amazing information on so many levels, but I always like to check to see if anybody has some questions that we might have forgotten or missed.
On your family portrait, you said you're 70% done. What happens in the next 20%, and how do you know when you are done?
Okay, so we're going to do a little math here. So I have 30% still to do.
Well, final 10.
I know. It's easier. So you can see here, I don't even have paint. Like, this is a red shirt, but it doesn't even have a paint on it. These jeans, if you look at the work in my booth, it's very tight, it's very finished. This painting, when it's done, will be much tighter than it currently is. So that's it. And there'll be more contrast and more definition kind of throughout. But that's a great question, thank you.
I have to say, it's really, really fun when she does the reveal. And one year, was it last year? I captured like 3 of them, last year or the year before. And to watch people's reaction when they see it for the first time, I would love to see them.
They're going to come, they'll be here at the end of February.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's fun.
We'll do a thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
You all work from photographs beautifully. Do you ever work from life? And tell us about that.
Okay. Repeat the question.
Oh, the question is do we ever paint from life? So yes, painting from life is an exercise on many levels because you're collaborating with your live model.
As long as you're not smearing off the canvas.
Right, well you are. Sometimes, I remember one I was finishing, it was a lovely reclining nude from the back, and I was in my 3rd day, and I was mostly done with her, and I usually save what's going on around the subject matter for the last because I'm tired at the end. And when I'm really into my work, I begin to sing, but I don't even know I'm singing. And the model said, "Oh, we're doing karaoke now." And I went, "It's alive." Like, I forgot she was a human being with needs and could hear me and report on what I do when I'm in my state of bliss. So it is a collaboration. You have to work with people who are going to show up, who are going to understand you and work with you. So it's more difficult in that way. But it's easier in terms, for me than painting from photographs is, because as Robin can probably attest to you, photography is a liar. It darkens the darks, it sharpens the edges, it adds reflections and glares that aren't there in life, and it can sort of trap you into painting every tooth in the zipper, even if the zipper isn't the story. So painting from life is an exercise at the very least. I think that artists who want to sort of explore their work should push towards painting from life when they can, because it's kind of a way a doctor might tell you if you have a bad back that you need to exercise your core. When you exercise your mind when painting from life, you have to translate 3D to 2D instead of just copying 2D to 2D. So it's that translation is an exercise, and what I have found that after painting from life, I go back and paint from photographs and my paintings are better. So for me.
Yeah, I love, and we used to be able to paint from life a lot more. Now everybody's so busy that often we have to do photographs and doing a lot of commissions. They'll often send me the photos that they want me to work from. So it is harder that way, but it's great to be able to do it in person.
I like to tell the story of you. If you were standing outside in the bright sun and somebody had a hat on, if you looked at a photograph of them, they would have maybe a cast shadow over their eyes, and it would look maybe black in the photograph. But if you were standing next to them from life, you'd see skin tones there. And that's the difference between a photograph and working from life. And even though I work a lot from photographs, the reason to work from life is to understand what the photograph is lying to you about, and knowing what happens in life, and then you can apply that to your painting if you are working from a photograph. And then I would also say that when I teach, I always work with a live model. But then I also shoot the model from each student's easel position and give them a printed photograph from their position so that they can see what the difference is between working from life and working from a photograph. Because often it's easier to get the drawing correct from the photograph, but to get the color right from working from life. So you kind of, when I teach, I try and emphasize that both sides of that to people, because again the deal is that today the reality of people's schedules and all that is very difficult to get somebody to sit for you for long enough to be able to finish a full painting.
Great question, great answers. Yeah. Yeah. Wendy, and then back to Nancy. We're gonna do Wendy first, and then.
I just have a question for Robin. You mentioned that the picture that you were working on had a lot of challenges for you. What was the biggest challenge, or is there a challenge that stood out for you that was a bit of a question mark?
That is a really good question, and I would say, I'm still trying to decide what goes sharp in this painting and what goes soft in terms of the focus. And I've been challenged by every face. The other thing is that these faces are smaller than what I usually work. So working smaller is harder for me. Although one thing that's really happened as I've worked on this is that I've gotten a lot better and faster at getting, I adjusted to it. Like, it's very shocking to me, because since I'm painting 16 heads, they're like this big. Usually I'm working like a full-size, a life-size head, and this is much smaller. And it's much harder to see. But again, it's amazing how much I've learned just in working on this. And then the other thing, just doing the photography was really challenging. I mean, this is a 2-year-old here. So, and the 2-year-olds, the little kids were challenging, but the teenagers were more challenging than the little kids, because they were in those white shirts that their grandmother had chosen, and they all hated those shirts. And they were trying to lobby me so they could be in white t-shirts. And the grandfather heard the conversation. He goes, "No, absolutely not. We're in those shirts. That's, end of discussion." So without the collaboration of the grandparents, and the real, we really collaborated on all parts of this. And so really, so many challenges.
Family dynamics.
Yes, the family dynamics, just managing the dynamics of all the personalities. Like the painting became maybe a little easier than that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, how do you handle a situation where a client wants to interject his or her opinion about your art, and maybe he or she doesn't agree with the neck or the nose or whatever? How do you handle that?
You just tell them to shut up.
I actually have a part of the contract that I work with for commissioned pieces where I essentially find out if I am the right artist for you. And I'm happy to send you to an artist who I believe would be a better fit for your project. But that is really the key piece, is that I will do videography instead of photography with my collectors, and I am happy to come back and reshoot as many times as we want, and to redesign any way we want to, up until the point where the painting starts. And once the painting begins, I have full creative control, and you can either accept or reject the work in the end. But I don't make things pinker or sharper or whatever, because I put my name on there. And I really am sort of birthing these from my heart, and it would just break my heart to say, change something that way. So I have to make sure that everybody knows that when they work with me. You're working with a very sensitive person who really loves her work and is so connected to it. So can you give me that? And if you can't give me that, then I know lots of really amazing painters who are so skilled at making changes and evolving to a client's whims, and I will pair you with the person that fits your project.
That's a very interesting difference between us.
Yes.
Yes, because I am all about getting myself out of the middle more, and you probably do this too, and I'm sure Judith does, but I guarantee that you'll be delighted with the painting or you can't have it. So, and I'll refund you your deposit. But I work very hard before I ever start painting to get agreement on what do we think that painting is going to look like. So I'll spend time in Photoshop moving things around, whatever. I will. If a tummy needs to come in, or if we need to do a little retouching on, wrinkles, or I don't think we need to have every single wrinkle. As long as we can still get the likeness, then we don't have to include every single little crow's foot in there. It really is about, do we recognize the person when we look at the painting? Do we recognize them, not just their physicality, but who they are spiritually, who they, that the cliche is that we've captured their soul. I don't know about that, but I do want you to look at it and go, that's my person, I get it. And that's how people often ask, how do you know if something's done? That's how I know if it's done. If I can look at it and go, that's them, that I captured them.
With my portrait commissions, I let them see every stage. So they'll see the drawing, and I post on Instagram and Facebook every day, so they can either see it there or I'll send it directly, and they can participate, and they love that part. because they start seeing the painting evolve, and they like that they're a participant in it. So I always let them be part of the process. And if at the end, I mean, rarely at the end do they have any problem with it. It's usually, okay, it's done. And so the two little girls I was just telling you about that have passed away, the parents came twice a day to check it, and they gave a lot of opinions. But by the end, and I wanted them to because it's such a heartbreaking issue, and so I wanted them to be participants in it. And so by the end, then they were satisfied.
Did you cry through that whole process? I just can't not.
Yeah, it was very hard.
Yeah. And really good question and really good answers. And I think when you commission, if you're going to commission an artist to do something for you, you have to trust them. And it's great if you can make little adaptations, but you don't commission them to do exactly what you tell them to do. You're commissioning them because you trust that they'll capture what the vision you want. So, I have another question over here.
We want to make sure people can call.
My wife will probably make me take Waymo home after I ask this question, but it is a little strange. Maybe. Okay, at home we have in our closet, she's an only child, we have a portrait of my late mother-in-law. As I said, she has no siblings. This portrait just does not go with anything we have or will ever have. Do you have any advice on how to respectfully de-access a portrait of a beloved family member?
That's a tough one. So I will tell you the story that my uncle, who's about 13 years older than me, not very much older than me. We really were more like brother and sister, but his mom, my mom's mom, passed when he was only 10 years old. And he came to Missouri from California to see my home when my son was born for the very first time, and walked into my living room and started to cry because there was a portrait on the wall of my mother at age 5 and his mother as an adult. And he said, "That's where that is. I never knew that's where that was." And I said, "Well, you need to take that with you when you go home." He goes, "Oh no, that's your mother." I said, "Oh no, that's your mother. My mom's still alive." And I really understood then what that kind of portraiture can give to someone. So somewhere, she may be the only sibling, but she's probably not the only cousin or the only sister. Somewhere there's somebody on this planet who will cry when you give them that. So go through your Ancestry.com or whatever and find who it is that's going to love that painting.
And get that Waymo app ready. Just kidding. And that actually is a good question, because there comes a time when many people need to divest of things. And the Royal Palms Resort, help me, developer's name, who's no longer, Fred Unger. When he was remodeling or re-updating the Royal Palms Resort, which is an iconic historical register, he was dumpster diving in the Fifth Avenue Art District, and I can't remember what gallery, but he found a whole bunch of older portraits in the dumpster, and he used many of those throughout the property at the Royal Palms Resort in the decor before the next iteration. Then they moved those out.
Wow.
And there was a beautiful charcoal piece of a dog that hung in one of the private dining areas, and it was a dumpster dive. So one man's discard is somebody else's treasure, and
Wanted to end up in the dumpster.
yeah, No, but I'm just saying, so what somebody had let go of became a treasure and part of the iconic property of the Royal Palms, where there's all these portraits hanging around, so something to think about. Yeah. Any other great questions? I love this. I love how you get it. So, oh, it's 5:05. So I want to thank Tina, Robin, and Judith for sharing your passion and your delight of capturing people's emotions, and thank all of you for being here with us today, and hopefully some online viewers as well. And we just are so honored to have people join us here, and we look forward to next week is heavy metal, so a little bit different direction here. But thank you ladies so much, and I hope that you'll go take the time to go check out each of their studios.